Today was the second time that I was rushed from the airport to a meeting. This was the second time, which is a pleasant experience. The first time was not as pleasant. When I was rushed from the airport to a meeting where I got fired by President Ahmadinejad as the ambassador to Malaysia. The end result, I hope, of both is good. The first one was good. I hope that this one also would have some good exchange of views. Now, it's truly a privilege to be here in this prestigious conference to share some thoughts about our gas plants. And I wish to register my appreciations to organizers, and particularly to Dr. Herman Franzen and the chairman of the conference, to Mr. Washer and their colleagues in Energy Intelligence and the New York Times. In the 15 minutes allotted to me, I will touch on a number of 2-3 issues. One, Iran's outlook on gas. Then I'll talk very briefly about some principles of our new model contract, and then a few pointers about opportunities for partnership. When we came to the room, we heard the experts on gas talking about the importance of natural gas as far as CO2 emission is concerned. And I have a prepared statement about the importance of gas and the question of its share in the energy basket in the future. The electrical cars, the renewable energy, despite all these, which are welcome developments, I think gas is an important fossil fuel that is cleaner than oil and it's here to stay with us for decades to come. Now, Iran's gas reserves is known. By many accounts, we have the largest gas reserves in the world. I'm not here to say how good we are in this. I'm here to say how bad we are. How bad we have been in developing our resources. Some are due to geostrategic considerations and some to our ability and our technical know-how to do so. The asymmetric relations between our reserves and our production is quite telling. When we say that we have the largest hydrocarbon reserves in the world, but at the same time we see that we produce only about 3.8 million barrels of oil and somewhere around 800 million cubic meters of gas now, that shows that we have not been quite efficient in terms of our production. Now, we can complain about geostrategic considerations, but I'm here to talk more about the inefficiency with which we have been working. Now, there are reasons, some good reasons for it. The Iran-Iraq war for 8 years, which ruined the Iranian oil and gas industry, the sanctions and all that. But apart from those, we have not been quite as successful as we would have wished in order to develop our resources. Now, we plan to have, by the year 2021, about 1,100,000,000 cubic meters of gas per day, somewhere around 400 BCM within the next 4 or 5 years. Where these gas come from, there are a number of major gas reserves offshore, Kish Island, Farzad A and B, North Pars, a number of others. We are discussing the development of these fields with a number of international companies. The major and the salient factor in these is monetization of these projects and integration of these projects, where they'll be dedicated to downstream programs. Therefore, these figures, I think, are important, and they are not over-ambitious, that today we produce about 800 million cubic meters per day, and by 2021, we would like to be able to produce 1,100,000 cubic meters of gas per day. Now, what are we planning to do with this? Already we are exporting some to Turkey, about 10 BCM. We have the capacity to add to that if other factors would meet the criteria. We are now exporting some close to 10, 11 million cubic meters to Baghdad, and that is going to be increased gradually to somewhere around 50 million cubic meters per day. We export a minute amount to Armenia. We swap some with Azerbaijan. We have a contract with Pakistan. Our side of the border, the infrastructure is ready, but on the other side, they are not prepared. But that is a pending contract. There is discussion with India. Therefore, the potential is there. We need to be in the international gas market with considering our reserves, whether it is through pipeline or through LNG. Our policy is to have LNG plants. We are working very hard on that project. Iran LNG is a 10 million ton LNG plant. We are also discussing with Oman a pipeline through the sea to Oman, which has the blessing of both governments, and the negotiation is going forward well. The spare capacity of Oman LNG also is something that we are working with them. Therefore, as far as gas is concerned, I think the key point is the numbers that we produce now and what we plan to be producing by 2021, where we have close to 100, 150 million cubic meters of gas per day spare capacity for export or other purposes by 2021. Now, I pointed out a number of major gas reserves: Kish Island, Farzad A and B, North Pars, Gulshan and Ferdows. These are projects that we are in the process of negotiation with a number of IOCs. Now, as far as the new Iranian model contract is concerned, I'm not going to get into details, but we are in the process of negotiating with 28 different companies. 28 fields are being discussed based on this new model contract, which is not new anymore. It's already old, and most IOCs and international companies have been consulted and they know about it, about the details. But the major point is that it's an integrated, long-term, managed risk contract where it runs into 20 years, perhaps in some cases 25 years. It's flexible, and the average IRR in those projects are between 14 to 15%. Our experience with the negotiations, the 28 negotiations that we have based on the documents we have signed, is that it has been welcomed by international companies, and they are seriously considering it. We have received a number of development plans from them. We are considering those plans, and our policy is to be able to manage and finalize at least 10 contracts by the end of Iranian year, which ends in March 21st of 2018. As I said, these are not over-ambitious figures and expectations. We think we will be able to achieve those. Of course, I know that many would wish to see the role of the geostrategic climate in this, but I'll avoid entering into those discussions unless I'm provoked and asked questions. Now, out of those 28 MOUs that the negotiations about them are undergoing, everybody knows that one has led to a contract about phase 11 of South Pars. 8 or 9 more are at the final stages of being completed, and we hope to be able to finish those within the next 4 or 5 months. Now, I suffice with this and would try to get engaged in exchanges with the public or with you as washer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Zamaninia. That was a very interesting run through the plans Iran has in some detail there for development of its gas sector. I'm just going to start by risking provoking you with a discussion of geostrategic considerations. I mean, obviously, the theme we have for this conference is adapting to uncertainty, and there is now this uncertainty in the geopolitical sphere following President Trump's statement last Friday, which he said he's not going to recertify the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. This creates clearly some uncertainties over what's going to happen in the next few months. Other parties to the deal have stood by it. So what I'm wondering is, have you heard anything, I suppose specifically from some of these partners you're close to concluding deals with, in terms of concerns on their part, whether the situation having changed now, that's going to cause any hesitation with making progress on some of these deals?
You were enough provocative. This was last Friday. The statement by President Trump was last Friday, and we have not yet heard a reaction from our counterparts. But I don't think that any of us or any of our partners have been surprised by this statement. Our expectation of policy formulation and policy statement coming out of Washington have been very measured these days. Therefore, I dare to say that no one got excited or surprised by this statement. However, the Iranian public took a lot of offense at this statement for many reasons. It lacked any vision for peace and stability in the region, for the long-term peace and stability in the region. It lacked history of the relations between the two countries. It had selective references to events. It was filled with mere allegations against Iran. It had a lot of chest beating. But as far as policy is concerned, the certification of JCPOA was something domestic. It had nothing to do with JCPOA. As far as JCPOA is concerned, President Trump and his administration, based on JCPOA, need to renew the waivers, sanctions waivers, which they have done so far. Now, as far as international relations is concerned, it has drawn, I mean, the statement by President Trump has drawn a lot of adverse reaction from around the world, in Europe, Asia. There are a number of regimes who are happy with it. I think the statement catered to their whims, which had very little to facts in our region and geostrategic considerations in our region. Therefore, as far as I believe, I think that the statement and also the policy, I mean, US-Iran strategic policy, which was only 5 sentences, when you look at the site in White House, there are only 5 sentences, which is called the US-Iran strategy, new US-Iran strategy. I think it has little or no effect, little or no implication on our future plan in the oil industry.
Okay. I mean, I suppose the situation at the moment, diplomatically, politically, doesn't look particularly promising, but do you think there is anything in this where there is scope maybe for some negotiation, some discussion, there may be some give and take, there may be even a means here for addressing some points on Iran's side in terms of some of the sanctions relief you've been hoping for from when the JCPOA deal was put together?
As an oil official, I am ready now to discuss and negotiate with US oil companies. But as far as JCPOA is concerned, that is out of my reach and out of my expertise. That's
okay.
For others to discuss.
Okay. I just want to come back to one point on you mentioned these 10 deals you're close to concluding. How many European, North American companies are in that number?
How many European or North American? There is no North American, none.
Okay.
But as far as Europeans are concerned, I think each and every European company is engaged in the discussion with our national Iranian oil company. I cannot think of one that is not. Our best approach to this is to have. See, when I said that we are inefficient, what I meant that these are all translate into opportunities. Our reserves, the ratio of our reserves to our production, our inefficiency, these are all translate into lucrative opportunities for companies with technology, those with capital. The cost of production in Iran, both in terms of oil and gas, is the lowest in the world, among the lowest in the world. Wherever you dig a hole in Iran, you run into either a gas or oil. Therefore, the cost of production is low in Iran, and history and our way of development, the lack of investment in our industry, they all translate into opportunities for major companies to get engaged. As far as I know, at this time, all Europeans are engaged, Asians are engaged, Russians are engaged, and we would like to see a consortium, a partnership between not only the Europeans, but the Asians and the Russians to see which projects they wish to engage in. And we are reasonably confident that within the next 4 or 5 months, we will reach a number of important contracts.
Okay. You talked about the obstacles Iran has faced and some of the reasons why it's not made the progress in developing its gas resources that it might have done. In looking at the plans you now have going forward, how important is foreign involvement, technology, finance, project management, etc.? How important is that to achieving those ambitions?
I think it's very important. I took the risk when I said that we've been less than efficient. It's unbecoming to an Iranian official to talk about the difficulties that we have. But as far as the oil industry is concerned, that is really a fact. And all these lead to opportunities for partnership with the Europeans, with Asians, the Russians, and that is absolutely important. We are running out, we have just came out of the sanctions. The cash flow is low in Iran. We need somewhere around $200 billion worth of investment for the next 5 years, about 140, 130 some in the upstream, about 60 some in the downstream projects. The projects are all defined and they are being discussed. We need capital, and we need technology, and we need management.
Okay. You talked also about looking at monetization, integration in Iran of gas, and you also talked about exports. I'm just wondering what the kind of priority for Iran is, whether it's more meeting rising domestic demand using gas domestically in industry, or whether it's creating an export industry and also obviously the revenues that come with that.
I'm terrible today. We are a very wasteful nation. We waste a lot of energy, perhaps 4 times as much as the Japanese, for example. We use an equivalent of 5 million barrels of oil per day in Iran. And this is humongous. We have defined about $20 billion worth of energy efficiency projects for the next 5 years. And hopefully we would be able, our policy objective is to bring down energy intensity by a figure which I don't recall. Anybody recall? My colleagues from NIOC are here. Energy efficiency, energy intensity, what is the figure that we would like to bring down within the next 4 or 5 years? By 3%, something like that. But that is a priority policy for Iran in order to contain this humongous urge for use of energy inefficiently. Therefore, $20 billion worth of projects have been defined, and they are this resources for reward and for payment of these projects are all done and clear. They are lucrative business, and we are discussing with many companies about these energy efficiency projects. Therefore, we hope to be able to contain this domestic consumption in order to be able to play the role that we deserve, that Iran deserves in terms of energy security at the international level.
Okay. Before we go to the floor, I wanted to just switch commodities, if you like, and talk about oil for a moment. Iran is obviously part of OPEC. You're part of an OPEC deal that has gone some way to rebalancing the market. I just wonder what your thoughts are on whether, how well this is working. Is the price levels it's generated or helped generate been adequate for Iran from an economic, from a fiscal point of view? Does OPEC and its non-OPEC partners need to do more?
Right. No, as far as I think, OPEC has been transformed from when it was established. It's now a forum for dialogue between consumers and producers. It benefits both sides. We are pleased and with the way OPEC has decided to cut some production in order to bring a semblance of balance between supply and demand. We think that this trend will continue, and we will support this trend. Not only OPEC, but GECF also, Gas Exporting Countries Forum. That is also a forum for discussion and coordination of energy policy in order to promote international and global energy security.
So you would support an extension of the OPEC
Right.
non-OPEC deal for the end of next year,
Right.
for example?
Right.
And do you think by, say, the second half of next year, Iran would be playing a part in that in terms of maybe restraining its own production?
We are trying to increase our capacity for production by 22. As I said, our plan is not over ambitious or unreachable. By the year 2021, we would wish to be able to have capacity to produce 4.7 million barrels of oil, which we will match with the policy decisions that we will make in OPEC.
Okay. Right, well, let's see if we have any questions from the audience. As usual, wait for the microphone to reach you, and please give your name and affiliation before you ask your question. Okay. I think we've got somebody over there. Yep, okay.
Hi, thank you, Minister, for joining us. Alex Schindler, Energy Intelligence. You mentioned LNG as part of your strategy. When do you think we'll see the first LNG project get off the ground in Iran? And I appreciate that sanctions will allow potentially projects to go forward. But when we're talking about LNG, of course, there's lots of finance involved, and that becomes a bit difficult given the current situation, even if nothing changes. So when do you see the first LNG project coming in Iran?
We have a mini LNG program, and then the Iran LNG, which is 10 million ton. If I had my shopping list and my wish list, I would say that 2021, 2022. But some others may disagree with me and say that it may be a bit later.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm just struggling to see here, but any other questions? Yep, over there, sorry.
Oh my.
Amir from BBC. There's quite a lot of talk about Iran exporting gas to Europe. And there was some talk before Friday, obviously, about Iran supplying some of the existing pipelines, plans for pipelines running through Turkey. Are there any of those where you are in serious negotiations, not your wish list, where you are in serious negotiations for supplying gas to Europe through any of those pipeline projects?
As a country that has the largest reserve of gas in the world, we are bound to have some kind of contribution to energy security, not only in Europe, but in Asia. However, with our calculation today, it's not viable to send gas to Europe through pipeline, whether it's through Turkey or any other way, which Turkey seems to be the only way at this time, but it's not economically viable at this time. But potentially, Iran can and will be a partner with Europe as far as supply of gas is concerned, perhaps through LNG.
Okay. Yep, over there.
Olivier Gantois from Shell. Mr. Minister, I wanted to ask you a question about Qatar, because so they are now opening or reopening the resource in the northern field area. And I wanted to ask you a, well, non-political question, which is, do you see that as more an opportunity or a threat?
Certainly, we don't see that as an opportunity, but Qatar started way before we did, working in South Pars. But at this time, through the work that we've done during the last 4 years, our lifting of gas from South Pars nearly equals to what Qatar does. And we also have some programs for South Pars as well. Therefore, I don't label it opportunity or threat. It's a fact of life, and we are dealing with it.
I think we've got time for one more question, if there's any more from the audience. Another one from over here. Okay.
Hi, James Cockayne from MEES, Middle East Economic Survey. I've got a small follow-up to Alex's question and a small follow-up to the South Pars one. Just to check on the export options, you said you'd have substantial surplus of gas by 2020, 2021, but it sounded like there's not much chance that LNG exports will be up by then, and you don't see much chance of shipping the extra gas to Turkey. What would be the time frame on the Oman pipeline? Is there any chance that would be started up by then? And then the other question with Qatar and South Pars is that it sounded like there were some statements coming out of Iran that Total now stands very little chance of getting the South Pars oil layer because they're involved in Al Shaheen in Qatar. Is that correct?
Now, I didn't want to imply that we are not going to be able to finish Iran LNG by the year 2022. This is an ongoing discussion with our partners. As far as Iran-Oman pipeline is concerned, negotiation is on a daily basis. The two ministers see eye to eye on this. And hopefully when and if we finish these discussions within the next few months, I think the construction of the pipeline, perhaps you know better than I, is a 200-kilometer pipeline. Should not take much long. All our neighbors to the south, Arab countries of the south, except for Qatar, and all our countries, neighbors to the north, except for Turkmenistan, they need gas. And they are our natural partners and market.
Okay, I think that is all we have time for. So please join me in thanking Dr. Zamaninia for spending some time with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much.